So let's talk about what you said there for a second about offering your services and pitching your services. You know, the IEC, independent educational consultant industry, pretty wide spectrum. On one hand, you have fantastic people, yourself, Peggy Manley, who I both personally vouch for. On the other hand, you see these exposés every few months in the New Yorker or the Atlantic about these, used car salesman types will charge a ultra wealthy family $1 million and say, I guarantee your kid gets into Harvard or MIT or whatever. And typically they're shown in not a quite particularly positive light. So, what sets you apart, and specifically, what should people look for in an IEC so they make sure they find a you and not one of them?
Thank you for asking that really important question, Ravi, because unfortunately, I do feel like the media gives a platform to IECs that you described who are a little shady and not, I wouldn't say practice the ethics that should be practiced in those in this profession, for those in this profession. So the difference is, and I'm going to talk about me, but also as it relates to those that I feel are practicing elevated ethics in our field and how to recognize those, the difference between the two. So any IEC, any independent educational consultant, anyone who wants to do this privately and become an IEC, unfortunately, can just create a website and suddenly say, I'm an IEC or I'm a private college counselor with zero background knowledge or proof of experience. So it really does, unfortunately, fall on families to do the research to understand the differences. So one of the big ways that families can tell those people, those professionals apart is affiliation with an association. So there are associations that exist. One is the Independent Educational Consultants Association, the other, or IECA. The other is called HECA, which is the Higher Education Consultants Association. NACAC is another association, and that is the National Association for College Admission Counseling. All of these associations require a standard of ethics and experience in order to join. So that parents can know, okay, well, if I'm looking at an IEC, if they have that on their website, or you can go to the association website and look up a member to make sure that that membership is current. But just know, I would say especially for HECA and IECA, they require, IECA, for example, they have a list of requirements to join. And one of them is you had to have done a certain number of college visits. You have to do professional development every year. There are expectations associated with that. So that's one way of knowing that the person you're hiring does have expertise and background, is that affiliation with an association. This is actually a certification. It's the only one I know of that's out there right now. The Certified Educational Planner certification, which is given by the let me get this right, the American Institute of Certified Educational Planners. That's another association that in order to be a certified educational planner, you actually have to sit for an exam. It's a 5-hour exam and you're given different case studies, and you have to give your professional expertise about different students. You have to tell what you know about colleges. So this is a more, I would say, advanced certification if you're looking for an IEC who really has dedicated a lot of time and really knows what they're doing. This is a great certification that proves mastery or proves a high level of experience. So I would also recommend that. But I would also say looking at the educational background. Look at a resume, request a resume, look at their LinkedIn, look at the background. What are any IEC who is charging to give advice should be a student. So just as Ravi said earlier about a business, if you're in a business, you should be constantly learning to become better and to improve. It's the same for an IEC, as all of you know, or any parent who's been through this process recently with their child knows, everything changes all the time in the college admissions world. So something I learned 10 years ago may not be valid anymore now. So it's important that I stay up to date. Even if I visited a campus when I first started my career 23 years ago, it's important that I go see it again, because I promise you things will have changed since then. Maybe new buildings, new programs, maybe some programs will have gone away since then. So anyone you're working with should be a student and should be able to show that they are still learning about colleges, whether that's visiting, whether that's going to conferences and interacting with colleges. If you're wanting someone highly experienced, then they should also be in leadership in either these associations or in the admissions field, in the college access and admissions field in general. Maybe they're presenting, maybe they're on national boards and committees. And the reason all of that is relevant is because it keeps them connected to the profession, and it helps them to network and form relationships with both college admissions and counselors, which just makes them a different type of counselor than someone who isn't doing that. There's no good or bad. It's just, again, a different level of experience. So to answer Robbie's, those are all ideas for ways to tell counselors apart who are just creating a website, and then those that are really invested in being a professional. Something that sets me apart specifically from other counselors is my background. So 19 years in public schools means I understand the way schools work. I understand what counselors go through who are in schools and all that they have to do throughout the college process to help their students. I also invest in local high schools around me, so I stay connected to high schools, and that also helps me. Those partnerships also help me to be a better resource to my students. And then another approach I take, I guess that is a little different. I keep my cohorts really small, but then I'm highly accessible to my clients. And that's because I know this process is uber stressful for everyone involved. And I want to make sure that families don't ever feel in the dark while we're working together. So that is my approach: smaller cohorts and more accessibility, more intensive services. If families want it, it really is customized to whatever a student or family needs. And then another approach, I guess another thing about me that would be different is my philosophy is that I am here as an advocate to my students and here to provide empathy and positivity. I will counsel very transparently about admissibility, and I will absolutely help students to meet deadlines and help them to understand what they need to do to meet those deadlines. But ultimately, I feel really strongly that this is the student's journey. It is not my journey. It is not the parent. Well, the parents are involved, but it's the student's future. So we're all here to support the student and empower them to be in charge of this process. So that might be a little different than the way other counselors do things, but I feel really strongly that that's best for the student, because I want them to come out of this process really proud of their accomplishments, proud of their options, and to feel confident in the decision they end up making about where to go to college. So to do that, there are never any mandates on my part. I'm here to give information, and then I'm very respectful about what the student and the parents decide.